No one ever visited Blackthorn Manor, not because it was cursed, because everyone believed nothing survived there. The manor stood alone beyond the northern forests, where harsh winters lasted half the year, where roads disappeared beneath snow, where abandoned dreams went to die. It was the place unwanted nobles were quietly sent, when the world wished to forget them. 6 years earlier, a single carriage had climbed that lonely road. Inside sat the Duchess of Ashcombe, Lady Evelyn. She wore a wedding ring, a simple blue travelling dress, and carried only one small wooden chest. No servants followed her, no soldiers escorted her, no husband rode beside her, only silence. When the carriage stopped, the driver climbed down, opened the door, set her chest on the frozen ground, then climbed back inside. Without saying goodbye, he drove away. Evelyn stood alone, watching the wheels disappear beneath falling snow. She never called after him. She never cried. She simply turned, looked at the crumbling manor before her, and quietly whispered, "So, this is where my marriage ends." 6 years later, the Duke finally returned, not because he missed her, not because guilt had found him, because the king had summoned him. The royal messenger had ridden through the night carrying only one letter. Its wax seal bore the royal crest. Inside, only one sentence had been written: "Ride to Blackthorn Manor, immediately, before another kingdom claims what you abandoned." The Duke read it 3 times. For the first time in years, his hands trembled. He saddled his own horse, ignored the royal escort waiting outside, and rode through the storm. For 36 hours, he never stopped. Not for food, not for sleep, not even when his horse nearly collapsed beneath him, because he believed he was riding toward a forgotten wife, perhaps even a grave. Instead, as dawn broke across the valley, the Duke pulled his horse to a sudden halt. His breath caught. The ruined manor was gone. In its place stood something impossible. Golden wheat rolled across fields that had once been barren. Hundreds of apple trees stretched toward the hills. Windmills turned beside crystal-clear streams. Children laughed outside a beautiful stone school. Blacksmiths hammered glowing steel. Women carried baskets overflowing with fresh bread. Merchants lined the village square. The forgotten land had become the richest estate in the entire duchy. The Duke stared in disbelief. He had left behind ruins. Someone had built a kingdom without him. A farmer noticed the stranger on horseback. "You've come to see our Duchess?" The Duke frowned. "Our Duchess?" The old man smiled proudly. "Lady Evelyn. She saved every family in this valley. Without her, we'd all be dead." The Duke felt something tighten inside his chest. Dead? What had happened here? While he was gone, before he could ask another question, the sound of laughter drifted across the courtyard. He turned. A woman stepped out of the rebuilt manor. She wore no jewels, no crown, no expensive silks, only a simple cream dress with rolled sleeves. Her hands carried traces of flour. Her hair was loosely tied behind her neck. She looked happy, peaceful, alive. For a moment, the Duke failed to recognize her. Then she looked up. Their eyes met. 6 years disappeared. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The villagers slowly realized who the stranger was. The square fell silent. Then, a little girl no older than 7 ran from the schoolhouse. "Mama!" She threw herself into Evelyn's arms. Evelyn laughed softly, lifted the child, held her close. The Duke's heartbeat stopped. "Mama." His eyes never left the child. She had dark curls, bright blue eyes, and the happiest smile he had ever seen. The little girl noticed the stranger. She leaned close to Evelyn. "Who is that?" The entire village waited. Evelyn looked at the Duke. For 6 long years, she had imagined this moment. She had imagined anger, tears, questions. Instead, she felt nothing at all, only peace. She kissed the little girl's forehead, then answered quietly, "So long ago. He was my husband." The words struck harder than any sword. Not, "he is." He was. The Duke suddenly realized he had not arrived home. He had arrived too late. If you have ever watched someone realize the greatest thing they lost was the one thing they never truly valued, this story is for you. Welcome to Aurora Cinema Fiction. Stay with us. If this story moves you, please subscribe, like, and share. It means everything to this channel. Duke Adrian Ashcombe had not always been a distant husband. Before the war, he had been a different man. Not warm, not particularly gentle, but honorable. He believed promises mattered. He believed duty came before comfort. He believed a duke existed to protect others, even when no one thanked him for it. Then the war came. It lasted 5 years. 5 years of burned villages. Broken alliances. Friends buried beneath frozen earth. Every victory demanded another sacrifice. When Adrian finally returned home, the kingdom celebrated. The people called him a hero. Only Adrian knew, the man who returned was not the same one who had left. He slept little, trusted almost no one, buried himself in work. If he wasn't riding the borders, he was meeting ministers. If he wasn't inspecting soldiers, he was signing reports until dawn. His castle remained full. His life remained empty. That was when the king proposed the marriage. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, the youngest daughter of a respected noble family. Beautiful, educated, quiet, known throughout the capital for helping orphanages instead of attending grand balls. Adrian refused. "I have nothing to offer a wife." The king answered simply, "You have a duchy, a name, and a future. You don't need romance. You need stability." Adrian agreed, not because he wanted a marriage, because he believed it was another duty, nothing more. Their wedding became the grandest celebration the capital had seen in years. Musicians filled the cathedral. Nobles traveled from every province. The people cheered as the newly married couple rode through the streets. Everyone admired how beautiful they looked together. No one noticed. They barely knew each other. The first months were peaceful. Evelyn never demanded his attention. She quietly learned the estate, memorized every servant's name, visited nearby villages, read financial reports, asked thoughtful questions. Whenever Adrian returned late from meetings, she simply asked whether he had eaten. Sometimes, she waited awake until midnight, just to make sure he remembered. He always thanked her politely, then returned to work. She never complained. One winter morning, the housekeeper entered Adrian's study. "Your Grace, the Duchess has organized food deliveries." "For whom?" "The northern villages. The snowfall has trapped them." Adrian frowned. "I didn't authorize that." "No, but she used her personal allowance." He nodded once. "Very well," then continued reading military reports. He never asked how many lives she had saved. Spring arrived. Evelyn opened a small school for servants' children. Summer came. She hired widows whose husbands had died during the war. Autumn followed. She turned abandoned land into community gardens. Every season, someone's life quietly became better. Most people never knew why. Adrian certainly didn't, because every report about Evelyn passed through one man first. Lord Victor Ashcombe, Adrian's cousin, official steward of the duchy, the man Adrian had trusted since childhood. Whenever Evelyn completed another project, Victor smiled, then placed her reports into a locked drawer. Whenever she wrote letters to her husband while he traveled, Victor politely offered to deliver them. Most never left his office. Whenever villagers praised the Duchess, Victor simply never repeated their words. Slowly, almost invisibly, he built a wall between husband and wife. Not from stone, from silence. One evening, Evelyn stood beside the castle window, watching rain fall across the gardens. Adrian entered quietly. She smiled. I almost didn't hear you. He removed his gloves. You should be asleep. I wanted to wait. For me? So we could have supper together. Adrian glanced toward the documents tucked beneath his arm. I still have work. She nodded. I know. I'll have your meal kept warm. There was no disappointment in her voice. Only understanding. For reasons Adrian couldn't explain. That somehow hurt even more. Weeks became months. Months became years. Then, the accusations began. Estate accounts no longer balanced. Grain shipments disappeared. Workers claimed promised wages had never arrived. Every investigation pointed toward one office, the Duchess's. Victor looked deeply troubled. I don't want to believe it either. Adrian remained silent, but every signature is hers. He laid documents across the desk. Each carried Evelyn's seal. Each appeared genuine. Adrian stared at them for a long time. Bring her to me. Evelyn entered the study calmly. She looked from Adrian to the papers, then back again. I've never seen these before. Victor sighed quietly. I prayed you'd tell the truth. I am. He lowered his eyes sadly. I feared you'd say that. Adrian wanted to believe her. He truly did. But the documents, the accounts, the witnesses, everything pointed toward Evelyn. He dismissed everyone else. The study fell silent. Finally, he spoke. If I defend you without proof, the council will accuse me of protecting my wife. Evelyn looked into his eyes. Not angry, not frightened, only searching. And if you don't, Adrian closed his eyes. They'll destroy your name. She waited. So what will you do? He answered quietly. I'll send you somewhere no one can reach you, until I uncover the truth. Evelyn understood immediately. Blackthorn Manor, the abandoned northern estate. She nodded once. I'll leave at dawn. Adrian looked up. You aren't going to argue? She smiled sadly. No, because if the man I married no longer knows whether to believe me, no words I speak tonight will change that. She removed her wedding ring, placed it gently upon his desk, then whispered the sentence Adrian would remember every day for the next 6 years. I hope one day you discover who you truly sent away. Without another word, she walked out. The door closed softly behind her. Neither of them knew that Lord Victor was standing in the hallway, smiling. The journey north lasted 4 days. Rain followed the carriage almost the entire way. Villages grew farther apart. The roads became rough, the trees thicker. By sunset on the 4th day, Blackthorn Manor finally appeared through the mist. It was enormous. Ancient stone walls covered in climbing ivy, broken fountains, dark towers overlooking endless forests. Once, it had been one of the richest estates in the kingdom. Now, it felt forgotten. The elderly caretaker bowed as Evelyn stepped down from the carriage. Welcome, Your Grace. She smiled gently. You don't need to call me that. The old man shook his head. You'll always be the Duchess here. His name was Thomas. He had served Adrian's father before Adrian was born. Too old for military service. Too stubborn to retire. He quietly led Evelyn through the empty halls. Dust covered most of the furniture. Several rooms had been locked for years. Only a handful of servants remained. The Duke had not visited Blackthorn Manor in almost 8 years. Thomas stopped outside a large bedroom. I'm sorry it isn't warmer. Evelyn looked around. The fireplace was already burning. Fresh flowers rested beside the window. Someone had clearly tried their best. It's perfect. The old caretaker smiled with relief. That evening, Thomas served supper himself. Simple stew, fresh bread, warm tea. I'm afraid supplies are limited. Evelyn looked surprised. I thought this estate was prosperous. Thomas hesitated. It used to be. What happened? He lowered his eyes. The The steward stopped sending enough funds. Which steward? Lord Victor. Evelyn quietly set down her spoon. When? Thomas frowned. Years ago. He said His Grace ordered the reductions. Evelyn said nothing, but something inside her shifted. Victor controlled every estate account. Every shipment. Every letter. Perhaps. Far more than she had realized. The next morning, Evelyn woke before sunrise. Instead of remaining inside the manor, she walked into the nearby village. The sight broke her heart. Children wearing patched clothes, empty market stalls, collapsed cottages, fields left abandoned because too few workers remained. A little girl stood outside the bakery. She couldn't have been older than 6. She stared silently through the window, at a loaf of bread. Evelyn knelt beside her. Are you hungry? The child nodded once. Without speaking, Evelyn entered the bakery, bought every loaf inside, then spent the next hour walking through the village, handing bread to every family she met. An old woman caught her hand. You aren't like the others. What others? The nobles. Evelyn smiled softly. We all become hungry. We simply wear different clothes. The old woman blinked back tears. By afternoon, the entire village knew the Duchess had arrived, not because of her title, because she remembered people's names after hearing them only once. Because she carried baskets herself instead of ordering servants. Because she listened. That evening, Thomas found her studying ledgers in the manor library. What are you looking for? Estate accounts. He looked surprised. They haven't been opened in years. She turned another page, then another. Her expression slowly hardened. This doesn't make sense. What doesn't? The Duke approved repairs to the Eastern Bridge. Thomas nodded. He did. The bridge was never repaired. She looked at another ledger. He approved new farming equipment. We never received it. Another page. He sent money for the orphan house. Thomas looked confused. What orphan house? Silence filled the room. Evelyn slowly closed the ledger. Every payment had been marked. Completed. Every signature looked genuine. Every record appeared perfect. Yet nothing had actually arrived. Someone had been stealing from Adrian for years. Not hundreds of coins. Thousands. Maybe millions. She looked toward the rain beating against the library windows. I think I finally know what Victor has been hiding. Thomas frowned. Should we tell His Grace? Evelyn smiled sadly. I've written to him dozens of times. Thomas's face changed. I delivered every letter to Victor. The room became completely still. Evelyn slowly looked at him. You never sent them directly? I wasn't allowed. He said all correspondence had to pass through him first. Her heart sank. Every letter she had written, every explanation, every plea, every simple message asking Adrian how he was, had never reached him. She wasn't abandoned. She had been isolated. Carefully, deliberately, for years. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Duke Adrian sat alone inside his study. The wedding ring Evelyn had left behind still rested inside the top drawer of his desk. He opened that drawer every night, looked at it, closed it again, then buried himself in work. Until that morning, Captain Marcus stepped inside without warning. Something he had never done before. My lord. Adrian looked up. What is it? Marcus placed a folded report onto the desk. It came from Blackthorn. Adrian's pulse quickened. Evelyn? Marcus nodded. But... He hesitated. It isn't what we expected. Adrian opened the report. His eyes narrowed. The Duchess had reopened abandoned farms, fed nearly an entire village using her own allowance, repaired the old mill, paid workers personally, started rebuilding the school, all within 3 weeks. Adrian looked at Marcus. I thought she was under investigation. Marcus answered quietly. So did I. Adrian stared out the window. A question entered his mind that he should have asked years earlier. If Evelyn truly was stealing from the duchy, why was she giving away every coin she had? And if she wasn't stealing, then who had convinced him she was? Somewhere else in the castle. Lord Victor smiled as another forged report disappeared into the fire. He believed the Duchess was forgotten. He believed the Duke still trusted him completely. He had no idea. The first crack in his perfect deception had finally appeared. Keep watching. The best part is coming. Duke Adrian read the report again. Then a third time. None of it made sense. He looked at Captain Marcus. Who wrote this? The village magistrate. Can he be trusted? Marcus nodded. He has served 3 dukes. He has never once been accused of dishonesty. Adrian placed the report down slowly. Every accusation against Evelyn suddenly felt less certain. He remembered every conversation with Victor, every missing account, every witness, every document. Each one had pointed toward Evelyn, too perfectly, as though someone had built a case. Long before anyone questioned it, he stood. Prepare my horse. Marcus looked surprised. You're going to Blackthorn? No, not yet. I'm going somewhere first. An hour later, the Duke entered the royal treasury. Rows of ancient ledgers stretched from floor to ceiling. The chief archivist bowed. Your Grace, I need every financial record from Blackthorn Manor. The old archivist frowned. That will take time. I'll wait. Boxes began appearing one after another. Dust rose into the air. Years of forgotten accounts. Receipts. Tax records. Shipping manifests. Adrian worked until sunset. Then something caught his eye. 3 payments. All approved under his authority. Each bearing his signature. Yet, he had no memory of signing them. He compared another document. The handwriting matched. Perfectly. Too perfectly. He frowned. I never write the letter A like this. The archivist leaned closer. What do you mean? Adrian pointed. Someone copied my signature. But they copied the version I used when I was 20. The old man adjusted his spectacles. Your Grace, your signature changed years ago. Adrian nodded. Exactly. Only someone who had studied old records would make that mistake. His expression hardened. The forgery was excellent, but not flawless. At Blackthorn Manor, Evelyn had no idea what Adrian had discovered. She stood inside the abandoned orphan house, broken windows, collapsed roof, empty beds. Thomas quietly joined her. It used to shelter 40 children. What happened? The funding stopped. When? About 4 years ago. She closed her eyes. Exactly when Victor had taken complete control of the Duke's finances. A little voice interrupted them. Excuse me. Evelyn turned. The same little girl from the bakery stood nervously in the doorway, holding a bundle wrapped in cloth. I brought you flowers. Inside the bundle, wild daisies, picked by hand. Evelyn smiled warmly. They're beautiful. The little girl hesitated. My mama says, no one has ever stayed after promising to help. Silence settled over the room. Evelyn knelt until they were eye level. I will. You promise? I promise. The little girl smiled. It was a small smile, but real. That evening, Evelyn began writing again. Not 1 letter, 7. 1 to the Duke. 1 to the Royal Treasury. 1 to the King's Inspector. 1 to the village magistrate. 1 to the bishop. 1 to Captain Marcus. And 1 to herself. If every letter disappeared again, she wanted proof she had written them. This time, she sealed each one with her own personal crest, then looked at Thomas. These won't pass through Victor. Thomas nodded. They'll leave before sunrise. No. She shook her head. We leave before sunrise. His brow furrowed. We? You and I. We'll deliver them ourselves. Far away. Lord Victor sat comfortably beside the fireplace inside the Duke's castle. A servant entered hurriedly. "My lord, the Duchess has begun reopening the estate records." Victor smiled. "Let her. She'll find nothing. The ledgers, they're perfect. And if she starts asking questions..." His smile slowly disappeared. "Then, we'll remind her why she was sent away." The servant hesitated. "My lord, there is one more thing." Victor looked up. The Duke spent the entire day inside the royal archives. Victor's smile vanished completely. "What records?" "Financial records." The room fell silent. Victor stood slowly. His heartbeat quickened. Adrian had never questioned the accounts before. Never. Something had changed. He crossed to the window. Rain lashed against the glass. Then he spoke quietly. "Bring me every letter addressed to Blackthorn Manor." The servant froze. "There aren't any." Victor turned sharply. "What?" The Duchess stopped sending them. "No," Victor whispered. "That means..." His eyes widened. "She's found another way. Somewhere between the forgotten manor and the Duke who had finally begun asking questions. His perfect lie was beginning to collapse." Lord Victor did not panic. Not outwardly. Men like Victor had survived for years because they never appeared afraid. Fear belonged to honest people. Liars relied on confidence. He crossed his study calmly. Opened a locked cabinet. Removed a leather-bound ledger. Inside were names. Judges. Merchants. Guards. Messengers. Every person who had accepted his gold. Every person who had helped bury the truth. He studied the list. Then quietly tore out 3 pages. He carried them to the fireplace. The flames swallowed every name. Evidence was only dangerous if someone could find it. Before dawn, Evelyn and Thomas left Blackthorn Manor. No carriage. No servants. Only 2 horses. The letters were hidden beneath sacks of grain. If anyone stopped them, they would appear to be ordinary merchants. As the eastern sky began to brighten, Thomas suddenly slowed his horse. "My lady." She followed his gaze. 3 riders stood across the road, waiting. Black cloaks. No banners. No family crest. One of them smiled. "I believe you're traveling without permission." Evelyn's hand instinctively tightened around the reins. "We're free citizens." "Of course." The man smiled wider. "Then you won't mind handing over your bags." Thomas quietly moved his horse between them. "My lady." "Ride. They're here for the letters. They're here for you." The leader chuckled. "Wise old man." He drew his sword. "So let's stop pretending." Steel flashed beneath the morning sun. Thomas pulled his own blade. He was nearly 60. His hair had turned silver years ago. His hands carried scars from wars long forgotten. Yet when he raised his sword, the 3 riders hesitated. One whispered, "He's royal guard." Thomas answered calmly, "I was. And today, I'm enough." The first rider attacked. Steel rang across the empty road. Thomas blocked the strike effortlessly, then struck the man's wrist. The sword flew into the grass. The second rider charged. Thomas stepped aside. His opponent crashed from the saddle. Evelyn watched in astonishment. "You served the royal guard?" Thomas smiled without looking back. "I trained the men who trained them." The third rider looked uncertain now. He hadn't expected an old steward. He had found a soldier. Then, an arrow flew through the air. It struck the third rider's shoulder. He cried out. Another arrow landed at the feet of the leader. The attackers immediately turned. Archers emerged from the forest. 10 of them. Every bow already drawn. A familiar voice echoed across the road. "Lower your weapons." Captain Marcus rode out from the trees. Behind him, the Duke's personal guards. Victor's men immediately fled. Within moments, the road fell silent again. Marcus dismounted. He looked first at Thomas, then at Evelyn. "Are you hurt?" She slowly shook her head. No. Marcus looked at the scattered swords. You expected this. Evelyn nodded. If Victor realized my letters were no longer passing through him, he would try to stop them. Marcus looked toward the fleeing riders. He already has. Several hours later, Duke Adrian stood alone inside his private office. The forged documents lay spread across his desk. Captain Marcus appeared in the doorway. They attacked her. Adrian looked up sharply. What? 3 hired swords. She survived. Thomas fought them. And we arrived before they could escape with the letters. Adrian slowly stood. His voice became almost a whisper. Victor sent them. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence itself was enough. Adrian moved to the window. Rain clouds gathered above the valley. 5 years. For 5 years. He had believed Evelyn was manipulating him. He had watched her apologize, cry, explain, and every time, he had believed another man's version of the truth. His chest tightened. Not because of anger, because of shame. A memory returned without warning. Their first winter together. Evelyn had spent 3 days sewing blankets for children whose parents had frozen during a storm. She had worked until her fingers bled. When he asked why, she had smiled. If we have more than we need, then someone else shouldn't have less. He remembered another day. A servant accidentally broke a priceless porcelain vase. Everyone expected punishment. Instead, Evelyn quietly helped the terrified girl sweep the pieces together. No object, she had said, is worth another person's tears. Adrian closed his eyes. None of those memories belonged to a cruel woman. None. Then why had he stopped believing them? The answer came quietly. Because Victor had never attacked Evelyn's character. He had attacked Adrian's trust. One lie, then another, until doubt became easier than love. Marcus placed something on the desk. A sealed envelope. One of the letters she was trying to deliver. Adrian recognized the handwriting immediately. Evelyn. His hands trembled as he broke the seal. Inside, only one sentence was written. I no longer need you to believe me. I only pray you discover the truth before it destroys you too. Nothing more. No accusation, no anger, no plea. Just hope. Adrian read the sentence again, then again. A man who had commanded armies, who had never feared battle, suddenly realized something that frightened him more than any enemy. The woman he loved had stopped trying to defend herself because she no longer believed he would listen. And that was the greatest failure of his life. He folded the letter carefully, pressed it against his chest, then gave Captain Marcus an order he should have given years ago. Bring me Lord Victor. Marcus hesitated. Alive? Adrian's eyes never left the letter. Yes, I want him alive. He looked toward the darkening sky. Because before this day ends, he is going to tell me exactly how I became the man who betrayed my own duchess. Captain Marcus did not leave immediately. He remained standing in the doorway, watching the Duke. Your Grace. Adrian never looked up. What is it? Marcus chose his words carefully. If Lord Victor is guilty, he won't surrender quietly. Adrian folded Evelyn's letter with extraordinary care. I know. You'll need evidence. I know. You'll need witnesses. I know. Marcus hesitated. And if the Duchess refuses to return? Silence. A long, painful silence. Finally, Adrian answered. Then I will deserve it. Lord Victor received the summons before noon. The Duke wished to see him immediately. He smiled. Exactly as he always had. Confident, relaxed, untouchable. When he entered Adrian's study, he found the Duke standing beside the window. No wine, no fire, no conversation, only silence. Victor bowed. Victor bowed. You wish to see me, Your Grace. Adrian turned slowly. His face revealed nothing. I've been reviewing our financial records. Victor laughed lightly. A tedious task. It was. Did you find anything unusual? I did. Victor's smile never changed. What kind of irregularity? Adrian walked to the desk. He placed 3 forged documents before him. My signature. Victor glanced at them. They appear genuine. They aren't. Victor raised an eyebrow. No? I changed the way I sign official decrees 6 years ago. He pointed at the documents. These copies use the older signature. A mistake. Only someone copying old records would make. Victor remained perfectly calm. A clever observation. But forgers exist everywhere. Adrian watched him carefully. They certainly do. Then he placed another document onto the table. The original decree, signed the same week. A completely different signature. Victor's eyes flickered. Only for an instant. But Adrian saw it. The first crack. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Thomas finally reached the royal treasury. The chief archivist welcomed them personally. My lady, I received word you were coming. She handed him every ledger recovered from Blackthorn Manor. I believe these were altered. The old man opened the first book. His expression changed immediately. These numbers. They've been rewritten. He lifted another page toward the light. There. Can you see it? Evelyn leaned closer. Beneath the fresh ink, older writing remained visible. Different amounts. Different names. Different dates. Someone had scraped away the original records, then written new ones. The archivist nodded slowly. This wasn't done by amateurs. It was done by someone who understood royal accounting. Thomas looked at Evelyn. Can you prove it? The old man smiled. Oh yes. He carefully reached into a cabinet, then removed a small crystal bottle. Inside, a pale blue liquid. What is it? A restoration solution. He brushed a single drop across the page. Slowly, almost magically, the original ink began appearing beneath the false entries. Names emerged, payments, signatures, amounts. The truth had never disappeared. It had merely been hidden. Back inside the castle, Victor realized the conversation had changed. The Duke was asking questions. Questions he had never asked before. Dangerous questions. He decided to strike first. Your Grace, I'm surprised. After everything Lady Evelyn did, you still seem interested in defending her. Adrian looked at him. What exactly did she do? Victor blinked. What? You've repeated that accusation for years. So today, I'd like specifics. Victor smiled politely. She stole estate funds. How much? Victor hesitated. Which account? Another pause. Surely you remember. I asked the question. Victor felt something unfamiliar. Pressure, Adrian continued. You claimed she bribed merchants. Which merchants? You claimed she forged contracts. Show me one. You claimed she sold grain illegally. To whom? Each question landed harder than the last. Victor answered none of them, because every answer created another question, and every question led closer to the truth. Miles away, the royal archivist finished examining the ledgers. He slowly looked up at Evelyn. My lady. She searched his face. What is it? He turned the final page toward her. The person who stole from Blackthorn Manor wasn't merely robbing the estate. Thomas frowned. What do you mean? The archivist placed his finger beneath one repeated name. Every altered payment. Every missing shipment. Every forged tax collection. Every stolen donation. Passed through exactly one office. The office of the Duke's personal advisor, Lord Victor Ashcombe. Thomas whispered, My God. Evelyn closed her eyes. Not in triumph. In sorrow. She had prayed, for 5 years, that she was wrong. She had wanted Victor to be innocent, because if he wasn't, it meant Adrian had spent 5 years trusting the very man who had destroyed both their lives. The archivist carefully closed the ledger. My lady. This evidence is enough to convict him. Evelyn looked toward the window. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. No, she said quietly. It isn't enough. Thomas frowned. What more do we need? She answered with quiet certainty. The man who forged documents also intercepted letters. He bribed guards. He arranged attacks. If we arrest him now, we'll punish one criminal. She slowly met Thomas's eyes. But somewhere, there is still someone helping him. Just then, a frightened messenger burst into the archive. My lady. What happened? The Duke. He's gone. Thomas's face drained of color. Gone where? The messenger struggled to catch his breath. He rode to Blackthorn Castle. Alone. Evelyn's heart stopped, because she suddenly understood. If Adrian confronted Victor without knowing the full truth, one of them might never leave that castle alive. Evelyn did not wait. She was already on her horse before Thomas reached the courtyard. My lady. She tightened the reins. If Adrian faces Victor alone, Victor won't leave witnesses. Thomas mounted beside her. Then we ride. The horses thundered onto the road. Every minute mattered now. Blackthorn Castle stood silent beneath a dark afternoon sky. Duke Adrian dismounted alone. He had refused an escort, refused guards, refused witnesses. Some conversations could only happen between two men. The castle servants bowed nervously as he entered. Where is Lord Victor? In the West Library, Your Grace. Adrian walked there without another word. The great oak doors stood open. Victor was waiting. A fire burned quietly. 2 glasses of wine rested on a small table. I thought you might come. Adrian stopped several feet away. You expected me. Victor smiled. Eventually. You've always been intelligent. It simply took you longer than I hoped. Adrian's eyes hardened. You admit it? Victor poured himself a glass of wine. I admit nothing. I merely understand people. He took a slow sip. You especially. Adrian folded Evelyn's letter inside his coat. You stole from my estate. Victor smiled. I managed your estate. You forged my signature. I protected your reputation. You framed my wife. Victor finally looked directly into his eyes. No, I gave you someone to blame. The words echoed through the library. Adrian felt his fists tighten. You destroyed my marriage. Victor shook his head. No, I simply whispered. You did the rest yourself. Silence. Victor stepped closer. Tell me honestly, when Evelyn tried to explain, did I stop you from listening? Adrian said nothing. When she cried, did I force you to walk away? Silence again. When she begged you to investigate, did I forbid it? Victor smiled sadly. No, I merely knew something. What? That doubt always grows faster than trust. Adrian's breathing became heavier. Victor continued quietly. I never defeated Evelyn. You did. The Duke remembered everything. Every time Evelyn had reached for his hand, and he had stepped away. Every letter he never answered. Every dinner eaten in silence. Every lonely night she had waited for him. Victor had lied. Yes, but Adrian had chosen to believe those lies. The realization hurt more than any blade ever could. Victor walked toward the fireplace. You know why you believed me? Adrian looked at him. Because I never asked you to change. Evelyn did. What? Victor smiled. She challenged you. She questioned your decisions. She wanted you to become a better ruler. He leaned closer. And deep down, you resented her for it. Each word landed like a blow. Because Adrian couldn't deny them. Whenever Evelyn questioned him, he had felt judged. Victor had offered comfort, agreement, easy answers. One man had challenged him. The other had praised him. He had chosen praise, and lost the only person who truly loved him. Just then, The library doors burst open. "Evelyn," Adrian breathed. She stood in the doorway, breathless. Rain soaked her traveling cloak. Thomas stood behind her. "Leave." Her voice was urgent. "Adrian, leave now." Victor laughed. "It's too late." He reached into his sleeve. A small iron lever, hidden beside the fireplace. He pulled it. A deep rumble shook the room. Thomas shouted, "The floor!" Ancient stone split apart beneath Adrian's feet. The Duke dropped instantly. His hand caught the edge of the collapsing floor. His body swung above a black pit. Dozens of rusted iron spikes waited below. Evelyn screamed. "Adrian!" Without thinking, she threw herself forward. She caught his wrist with both hands. The sudden weight pulled her onto her knees. Thomas grabbed Evelyn's waist. "Hold on." Victor calmly stepped backward. "You see?" He smiled. "Even now, she's trying to save you." Adrian looked up. She found his eyes. No lies between them. Only truth and terror. "I'm sorry." The words escaped before he could stop them. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. "Don't. I'm sorry. I didn't believe you. I'm sorry. I left you alone. I'm sorry. I failed you." His grip began slipping. Blood ran from his fingers. The edge of the stone cut into his hands. Evelyn tightened both arms. "I won't let you go. You already should have." She met his eyes. "I loved you before you trusted me. I loved you after you doubted me. And I refuse to lose you now." Victor watched them silently, then sighed. Love. What a remarkable weakness. He drew a pistol from inside his coat and aimed it directly at Evelyn's back. Thomas saw it first. "My lady," Victor smiled coldly, "if one of you must survive, it won't be the woman who ruined 5 years of my work." His finger tightened on the trigger. The gunshot exploded through Blackthorn Castle. Evelyn closed her eyes. She expected pain. Instead, someone grunted. A heavy body struck the floor. She looked up. Thomas stood between her and Victor. His shoulders shook. Blood spread slowly across the old steward's chest. "My lord," he whispered. "Pull." Adrian's eyes widened. "Thomas," ignoring the burning pain in his hands. The Duke summoned every ounce of strength he possessed. He swung one arm upward, caught the stone ledge, then another. With a desperate roar, he pulled himself onto the floor. The moment he reached solid ground, he grabbed Evelyn and pulled her away from the collapsing trap. Victor calmly reloaded the pistol. "You always were inconvenient, old man." Thomas smiled weakly. "I've been called worse." Another shot rang out. This one shattered the library window. Victor spun. Captain Marcus crashed through the broken glass with 6 royal guards behind him. "Surrender." Victor laughed. "You came too late." He fired again. One guard fell. The others scattered for cover. The library erupted into chaos. Adrian laid Evelyn gently behind an overturned table. "Stay here." She caught his sleeve. "No, you don't face him alone again." He didn't argue. He simply nodded. Together, they stood, side by side. Exactly as they had on their wedding day. Only now, neither crown nor title mattered. Only trust. Victor backed toward the far wall, the pistol empty once more. He smiled. "You still don't understand." Adrian advanced. "I understand enough." "No." Victor shook his head. "You think I did this for money, didn't you?" Victor laughed. "Money is useful. Power is useful. But revenge..." His smile slowly disappeared. "Revenge lasts forever." Adrian frowned. "What are you talking about?" Victor's eyes darkened. "My father served yours. He died protecting Blackthorn Castle. No monument, no honor, no gratitude. He was forgotten. My family starved, while yours celebrated victories. Thomas looked up despite the pain. That's a lie. Victor ignored him. I promised myself. One day, the House of Blackthorn would feel exactly what my family felt. Loss, loneliness, betrayal. He looked directly at Adrian. So I didn't destroy your lands. I destroyed your heart. Silence filled the room. Even the guards stopped moving. Evelyn slowly stepped forward. You murdered innocent people. For revenge? Victor looked at her. I never hated you. I hated what loving you represented. She frowned. What does that mean? You made him happy. Victor's voice became almost gentle. As long as you loved each other. I could never truly win. So I separated you. He smiled. And you did the rest. Adrian's chest tightened. Every lonely night. Every cold glance. Every cruel silence. Victor had engineered them. But Adrian had lived them. He had become the weapon Victor used. He looked at Evelyn. I'm sorry. She simply shook her head. Later. Her eyes never left Victor. We survive first. Victor suddenly reached behind the bookshelf. A hidden lever clicked. The entire library trembled. Thomas's eyes widened. The foundation. Captain Marcus shouted. Everyone out! Massive ceiling stones began crashing down. Ancient beams snapped apart. Dust filled the air. Victor ran toward a hidden doorway behind the shelves. Marcus charged after him. Too late. The passage slammed shut. Victor disappeared into the darkness beneath the castle. Adrian tried to follow. Thomas grabbed his arm. Don't. The old steward coughed violently. He knows those tunnels. You don't. Another beam crashed between them. The library was collapsing. Marcus shouted again. Your Grace, we have to leave. Adrian looked once toward the hidden passage. Victor had escaped. He clenched his fists, then turned back, because one thing mattered more. He lifted Thomas onto his shoulder. Marcus helped support the old steward. Evelyn gathered the scattered evidence from the floor. The forged ledgers, the false contracts, Victor's private journal. She wasn't leaving empty-handed. Together, they stumbled through the collapsing corridors. Behind them, Blackthorn Castle groaned like a dying giant. The moment they reached the courtyard, the entire west wing collapsed into a cloud of stone and dust. The hidden tunnels, and Victor, disappeared beneath the ruins. Silence followed. Only the sound of rain remained. Adrian stared at the mountain of broken stone. Marcus spoke quietly. We searched every exit. There was no sign of him. Thomas managed a weak smile, despite the blood staining his clothes. Men like Victor never die as easily as stories hope. Evelyn looked toward the ruins. She knew Thomas was right. Victor hadn't spent 5 years planning every detail, only to leave himself without another escape. Somewhere, beyond those fallen stones, the man who had stolen 5 years of their lives was still alive, and this time, he had nothing left to lose. For 3 days, they searched the ruins, every tunnel, every cellar, every hidden chamber beneath Blackthorn Castle. They found broken weapons, burned documents, collapsed passageways, 3 bodies. None of them belonged to Victor. Captain Marcus finally removed his gloves. He's gone. Adrian stared at the shattered west wing. No. He escaped. Marcus nodded reluctantly. I believe so. Silence settled over the ruins. Victor had disappeared. Again. Thomas survived. Barely. The royal physician removed the bullet after 6 exhausting hours. When Adrian entered the room, the old steward was awake. Weak. Pale. But smiling. You still look terrible, my lord. Adrian laughed. So do you. Thomas's smile widened. I've looked terrible for 30 years. The laughter faded. Adrian became serious. You saved my life. Thomas shook his head. No. I simply returned what your father once gave me. Adrian frowned. My father? Thomas nodded slowly. When I was 17, I stood where you stood. Adrian sat beside the bed. I don't understand. Thomas looked toward the window. Your father saved my life during the border war. He carried me across a burning bridge after I had already accepted I would die. He never told anyone. He said, a duke doesn't count the lives he saves. Thomas smiled faintly. So, I never counted yours. Adrian felt tears sting his eyes. The man he had trusted least had loved him most. Meanwhile, Evelyn carefully examined Victor's journal. Most pages contained financial records, payments, bribes, false accounts. She turned the final page, then closed it slowly. Every crime documented, every name written clearly, every payment traced. Victor had recorded everything, as though he believed he would never be caught. She showed it to Marcus. This is enough. Marcus nodded. More than enough. Where is he? His expression hardened. We have every road blocked, every border watched, every messenger intercepted. He looked toward the ruins. A wounded man cannot travel far. Find him. She handed him the journal. Before he destroys anything else. Marcus rode before sunrise. He did not return alone. Victor was found before the end of the week. Not in a castle. Not among allies. Not with an army at his back. A shepherd discovered him sheltering inside an abandoned barn. His wound had worsened. His horse had collapsed. His gold had run out 2 days earlier. The man who had controlled an entire duchy from the shadows was arrested by 3 men on a cold morning, without a single word of resistance. When the guards brought him before Adrian, Victor held Adrian's gaze for several silent seconds, then looked at Evelyn. He said nothing. Not because he had no words, but because only then did he finally understand something. Power had never been his. He had only borrowed other people's weaknesses. And now, even those were gone. Spring returned quietly to Blackthorn. The orchards bloomed again. Birdsong replaced silence. Life, slowly, began again. When brought before the royal court, the evidence against Victor filled an entire chamber. The forged ledgers, the intercepted letters, the bribed officials, the hired killers, the hidden accounts, and finally, the testimony of the very people he had once controlled through fear. He denied nothing, because there was nothing left to deny. The court stripped him of every title, every estate, every privilege. He would spend the remainder of his life imprisoned inside the same fortress where he had once hidden innocent people. Not because revenge demanded it, because justice did. When the sentence was announced, Victor looked once toward Adrian, then toward Evelyn. For a long moment, he said nothing, then quietly lowered his head. He had no lies left to speak. The following week, the great hall of Blackthorn Manor filled with villagers, merchants, servants, soldiers, every person who had once whispered about the Duchess. Adrian stood before them, not wearing ceremonial robes, only the simple black coat of his house. He looked across the room, then spoke clearly. For 5 years, I believed lies. He looked toward Evelyn. I accused an innocent woman. I abandoned the person who loved me most. No one forced those choices. They were mine. Silence filled the hall. He continued. So today, I ask not only for her forgiveness, but for yours. He turned toward the people of Blackthorn. The Duchess never betrayed this estate. I did. Gasps spread through the room. Adrian removed the signet ring of the Duke, held it in his hand, then knelt before Evelyn, not as a ruler, as a husband. I cannot return the years I stole from us. I cannot erase your loneliness. I cannot ask you to forget. He lowered his eyes. But if there is even the smallest place left for me in your heart, I will spend the rest of my life earning it. No one moved. No one breathed. Evelyn looked at the man before her. He was no longer the proud duke who believed every convenient lie. He was simply Adrian, broken, honest, and finally, willing to carry the weight of his own mistakes. She stepped closer, not to lift him immediately, but to kneel beside him. Their eyes met. "I forgave you. The day you finally chose the truth." She gently took his hand. "But trust," she smiled through tears, "must grow again." Adrian nodded. "It will, I promise." She squeezed his hand. "I know." Together, they stood, not because everything had been repaired, but because they had finally begun repairing it. Thomas returned to the manor months later. His shoulder never fully healed. He walked with a cane. The servants tried to thank him every day. He always answered the same way. "I simply did what loyalty required." One afternoon, Adrian gathered the entire estate in the courtyard. A new stone monument stood beneath the oldest oak tree. It carried no names of dukes, no battles, no victories, only one inscription. "To Thomas, who proved that true honor asks for nothing in return." The old steward stared at the stone, his eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this." Adrian smiled. "You've deserved it for 30 years. The applause echoed across Blackthorn Manor. The loudest cheers belonged, not to nobility, but to the man who had quietly served them all. Seasons passed. The estate changed. Every account became public. Every tax was recorded openly. Every servant could speak directly to the Duke and Duchess without fear. The orphan house reopened. Its doors never closed again. The first child welcomed inside was the little girl who had once brought Evelyn a bundle of wild daisies. When asked why, Evelyn simply smiled. Kindness should always find its way home. Years later, a little boy wandered through the orchard holding his father's hand. "Dada," he looked up at Adrian. "Is it true Mama used to live all alone?" Adrian stopped beneath the same apple tree, where he had first realized he loved Evelyn. He looked toward the manor, where she laughed with children in the garden. "Yes." The boy frowned. "Were you afraid?" Adrian smiled sadly. "No. I was foolish." The child tilted his head. "What's the difference?" Adrian lifted him into his arms. "A frightened man can still choose what is right." He looked toward Evelyn. "A foolish man believes lies because they're easier than truth." The little boy thought about that, then asked, "How did Mama forgive you?" Adrian's smile softened. "She didn't forgive me because I asked. She forgave me because every day afterward, I gave her a reason to believe me again." That evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the hills, Evelyn found Adrian sitting beneath the old apple tree. She quietly sat beside him. Neither spoke. They simply watched the light fade across Blackthorn Manor. Finally, she slipped her hand into his. He smiled. "Still here?" She rested her head against his shoulder. Always. Above them, the branches swayed gently in the evening breeze. The same tree had witnessed their first laughter, their deepest sorrow, and now, their quiet peace. Because love was never about finding someone who never failed you. It was about finding someone willing to become better, after they finally understood how deeply they had failed. Outside, the bells of Blackthorn rang across a peaceful valley, not to warn of danger, not to announce war, but to welcome another ordinary day. And sometimes, the happiest ending a heart can receive is simply the chance to live an ordinary life with the person it almost lost forever. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it today. Subscribe to Aurora Cinema Fiction. Leave a comment below and tell us where in the world you are watching from. You might be surprised how many people felt exactly what you just felt. And remember, every story we tell is made with one purpose: to make you feel deeply and remind you that love in all its forms is always worth fighting for.